morning, everyone. It is now 8 o'clock, and we can go ahead and start our committee on appointments. And Commissioner Purdue, it is now the unofficial start of fall.
Yeah.
So I stand corrected from maybe 2 meetings ago. Let the minutes show that wasn't the end of summer. This probably is. So just little jokes for those who are watching our 8 o'clock appointments meeting. And a reminder, we just have a really busy day today. We have a full agenda. We have public safety, we have civil service, and then a reminder that we will be at the Goey Center for our First Ward neighborhood community night out for our meeting. So it'll start at 5, food at 5, I think start at 5, food at 5:30, and then the official business part of the meeting will be at 7, but opportunities to engage and connect with city departments will be from that 5:30 to 7 time. So the last couple ones were really great, so I encourage people to get out there today, including our city staff and neighbors and business owners. So thanks. All right. That was my little opening because we have a lot of business today, as you all can see. We had a few appointments, and actually I don't think we have anyone who resigned since our last meeting, so we had been reviewing that, if you all recall, just to make sure that went into the business, but there were none there in our petitions and communications. As a highlight at our last meeting, we talked about planning, which the mayor does have a candidate that she is connected to. Actually, I stand corrected. There is one item that is a resignation, James Mahayo, from the Vital Streets Oversight Commission. So I think that takes, thank you so much, Patrick. I think that takes Vital Streets to now 3 openings, so we'll put that in one of our priority areas as well. Thanks for pointing that out, misprinting that one. So we talked about planning, but also, so then Vital Streets now has 3, our Housing Appeals has 2, Parks and Recs has 2, Urban Ag has 1, but that is also tied to the farmers market. So those were the ones that we highlighted the last meeting. We were kind of fast and furious. And then we also did talk about planning for the openings that we have for the end of the year. So I will be connecting, Daniel shared some pieces of the work he's doing at our last meeting to communicate with those who have an expiring appointment and who will need to follow that personal information form process. And then I'll be meeting with the mayor too, I think later in October, just to kind of do an overview of all her appointments, although I know you also did share that information. So we can have that meeting. So colleagues, some of these have 3 years, some have 2 years, some have 1 year. Probably the most notable that has 1 year that is a standing meeting is our public safety body. So you all have appointments that you've made. Those are for 1 year, and you certainly could do those reappointments at your pleasure. So since we are at the unofficial start to fall, and it's September 19th, I wanted to highlight that about the appointment process, just renewing, because that will come very quickly for us. So noting that, if Ms. Deputy City Clerk, are you able to scroll down to the full agenda packet? Thank you so much. And okay. Oh, that's just the agenda. And we can just take a look if there's any ones that you all want to highlight, any ones that stick out to you. Again, Mr. Kwame has been sending the packet of information for PIFs that we had. Of course, we don't have any PIFs for today, but any new PIFs that we received as well.
Could I ask a quick question in the
Absolutely.
meantime? With a lot of the appointees' terms ending, do we have any indication as to how many typically don't renew or aren't reappointed? I guess, is there like a goal we can
Percentage?
have? Yeah.
No, not really.
Okay.
I would say, I think that's a good question, but there isn't generally a standard.
Okay.
I would say the biggest factors that rely on that are, certainly we look at attendance, because I know there have been some boards that have been unable to meet and conduct official business due to lack of quorum. And if it's an individual who has consistently missed, there would be an appropriate conversation to say, maybe this just isn't the fit. Sometimes we've changed times for that. Sometimes we've changed dates. But I know of some circumstances where that continued. I think it's just, is a hard priority. Maybe if people are doing one thing and then another thing, right? I know I've certainly been in that situation. Some other things that might, sort of tie into that would be a certain need that was needed on a body. So I think in preparation for master planning process, that probably certainly was something that the mayor looked as it related to, like, say, planning commission, just given the fact that that was going to be a lift, and we wanted to make sure we had good representation of different sort of perspectives there. Something else that could tie into if somebody stays or not is certainly if somebody has a conflict of interest, they have to note it. But if say maybe every meeting they have a conflict of interest, there might be a person who would say, you know what, I have to spend half of the meeting outside of the meeting. There's just challenges. I have more conflicts than I realized would be the case. I'm going to go ahead and step aside. And then probably the one thing which, we don't necessarily like to see, but is certainly a driver, is if somebody moves out of the city and there's like requirements. I would say those are probably, Daniel's nodding his head, so he's agreeing with me. Those are probably the most common reasons that we would have where somebody may not be reappointed. So, expertise, residency change, inability to attend or attendance, and then, I would say those are the three. Is that helpful?
Yep.
Okay, great. So thank you for pulling that up, Ms. Deputy City Clerk. I like saying that. We don't always get to see you up here, so. And so I really don't have any other updates as it relates to this, but I did want to have this pulled up to see if there was any questions that either of you had on any openings. If you want to keep scrolling, I think. Just trying to remember if there's one. This Monroe Tifa one, I know there's a lot on there, everyone, but that board doesn't always meet kind of as regularly, and Daniel's going to say something about that.
Yes, correct. According to their website, the Monroe North Tifa meets as called.
Yeah.
So I don't believe
Okay.
they've needed to call a meeting in some
Okay.
time, but I can reconnect with Tim Kelly.
That would be good. I just want to make sure, we do have a number of things that are going to be happening, that are happening and will continue to happen in that corridor as relates to river restoration, so I want to make sure we're prepared. But I know it's a fairly large, it has 11 members, so it has probably a good amount of people. Do either of you have any other business or items that you'd like to highlight?
I'm just curious, Commissioner Perdue, have you heard anything from Garfield Park? Because we reached out to them about Parks and Rec, and I don't think I've heard back yet.
I haven't either. I chatted with them maybe a week or two ago, but this didn't come up.
Okay. We could owe them a follow-up, too, just to see if there's somebody interested. I know we talked about having some representation from that part of the city.
Thank you both for that. That'd be great. And I don't think we had, usually some of our CIAs, that's in coordination with Daniel and Vera in economic development. I don't think there have been any new PIFs for those ones. Again, we're sitting pretty good on most of these at this point. Southtown does have two.
Yes, there are some folks in the vetting process, not newly in the vetting process, but there are some candidates
Just
available,
going through. Okay.
but they're still moving through the process.
Okay. Thank you for that reminder, because I thought we had, but it had been some time. All right. So again, I'll just highlight, I don't think we need to do anything with planning. The mayor is on top of that, but our Housing Appeals Board, Vital Streets, I could connect with Tim Bergman, not Tim Kelly, about that, because we did have some changes to that board. It did shrink, and we do have some representative groups that we want to make sure are heard on that body, given the millage associated with Vital Streets. You all brought up Parks and Rec, and then urban agriculture. It's really with the farmers market representation, and we're holding that space. So I would probably, again, prioritize Vital Streets, Housing Appeals, and Parks and Rec. All right, with that and hearing no other business, we're adjourned at 8:09. Thanks.
right, good morning, everyone. We will call fiscal committee to order here at 8:30, and we'll begin with a resolution recognizing the Grand Rapids Pride Center as a local civic organization.
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported, and we'll turn, is there anyone from the Pride Center here that'd like to come up?
And our office has done the due diligence behind this, and we welcome the representative to make some comments and tell us more.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Would you just mind turning the microphone on there, there's a little button there if it turns green?
Good morning.
Good morning.
We are just seeking to be recognized as a local civic organization to help us in getting raffle licenses for a fundraiser that we're having. Really, that's it.
That's pretty normal for us. Just quite, I always like to invite folks up if they'd like to say any words. Colleagues, any questions about this one?
Just glad to see this come forward. Thank you to the city attorney's office. I know we had some questions about the process, and appreciate the shepherding, and glad to have the Grand Rapids Pride Center in the second ward.
All right. Very good. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 2 is a resolution recognizing the Fountain Hills Center as a local civic organization.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Looks like we might have a representative from the Fountain Hills Center as well. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Terry Demeter, and I am from the Fountain Hill Center. We are up on the Heritage Hill on Fountain Street, and we've been here in Grand Rapids for 50 years. And we are asking for a resolution so that we're having a golf outing in a couple weeks, and we want to do raffle tickets.
Very good. Colleagues, any questions or comments? All right, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 3 is a resolution authorizing a payment of $19,175 for a 2020 FEMA AFG grant-funded training.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Our chief, Mr.
All right.
Brown,
Good morning, everyone. This is some administrative cleanup. We're going through a period of transition with our lead purchaser, and we had an employee going off on medical leave, and this one slipped through the cracks. So this is retroactive just to clean things up.
Very good. Colleagues, questions about this? All right. Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Item 4, resolution accepting the continuation of a grant award for $986,364 from the Auto Theft Prevention Authority.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Good morning.
Good morning. How is everybody?
Good.
This is a grant that we've been involved in over 20 years. We've been awarded the continuation of this grant covering wages and fringe benefits for 2 officers and 1 sergeant, as well as it helps with operational expenses. And we continued, they give 60%, we cover the other 40%. For the project this year, $986,364 for the city of Grand Rapids, Kentwood, Wyoming. Again, Grand Rapids will act as the fiduciary. This is a multi-jurisdictional group that we participate with the auto theft grant, sorry, it's still early, with Wyoming and Kentwood and the city of Grand Rapids. Again, the match will be funded by the general operating fund, which is the 40%. Again, this grant invests in our community by offering tools to combat auto theft and other crimes. One thing noted in here, currently, we utilize LPR technology in our vehicles and camera trailers, which we've done so since 2013. This same technology is available for wider use when Wyoming and Kentwood are utilizing additional tools that the grant has allotted. And we'll be moving to do the same upcoming, which was rolled out in our strategic plan in April of this year. But that's just something that we're working through the grant towards.
Very good. Colleagues, questions about this? Yes.
Question. Good morning.
morning.
The local match, it says 314, which includes the match for City of Kentwood and City of Wyoming. Can you say more about that?
It covers 60%. I know Kentwood and Wyoming also pay towards the match of the grant. I don't have the exact numbers for you, but I know that the ATPA pays for 60% of it, and then we backfill for the other 40. I'm not sure sorry, I don't have all the details for you on that.
I was scared. It almost read as if the match that we're providing is also covering City of Kentwood and Wyoming. So that's
We
really-
turn to our fiscal
I can weigh in briefly on that. That match is covered by all three of the partners in this grant.
Sure.
I'm certainly happy to get the exact breakout, but we do have to appropriate for the entire amount to execute the grant.
Wonderful. Okay.
Since we're the fiduciary, I believe, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
we
don't
pay
have
the
exact
314,
number.
and then Kentwood and Wyoming reimburse us for their portion of the 314.
That's correct, exactly.
Sorry, thank you for, that's all.
No further questions? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 5, resolution approving a new contract with the Interurban Transit Partnership for operation of Dash bus service between October 1, 2023 and September 30, 2026, with a total cost not to exceed $9,300,000.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Mr. Narramore, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. So this is a renewal of a 3-year agreement that we've had with the Interurban Transit Partnership since 1998, and we've constantly been renewing it. This year, we took a new approach. There's a new CEO at the Rapid, and we streamlined the agreement with our Department of Law as well as their legal team. And the new agreement in front of you, the not-to-exceed amount is what we currently have budgeted for the service that is out there on the street if we were to get the full 7-day-a-week service for this fiscal year and the next few fiscal years. We do this agreement on the Rapid's fiscal year, so they're on the federal fiscal year, which starts October 1st. So that's why the 3-year agreement starts for that date. And I included in the memo just a bunch of minor changes that we made, and then we've really been clear about the rate so that we can do rate setting so that it fits into their budget process, which usually lags a little bit behind the city process. So that we correct that in the following fiscal year for the city process. So any rate changes that they make on their side will be in the following fiscal year for how we're doing that. And Ms. Deb Prado from the Rapid is here if commissioners have any questions.
Very good. Colleagues, any questions about this? No? All right, great. Well, great. Thanks for this work. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 6, resolution authorizing a compressed natural gas, renewable natural gas refueling agreement with the Rapid in an amount not to exceed $150,000.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Mr. Hart, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. What you have before you is a renewal of a fueling agreement with the Rapid. We're kind of doing tag team on the Rapid on these items this morning. As you can see from the memo, we've got a great partnership between the Rapid, the DTE, and the city. And what you have before you is a 1-year renewal with two 1-year renewals after that. It's been a great partnership, and the cost is $1.66 per equivalent of a diesel gallon. And it's actually lower than it was before.
Very good. That's great to hear. Colleagues, any questions? All right, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Item 7, resolution approving a new 3-year contract award for health insurance administration through Priority Health, prescription drug administration through Disclosed RX, vision insurance administration through Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, and dental insurance administered through Delta Dental with an administration cost of $3,880,279.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Good morning.
Thank you. Sorry for the long title. I'll try to keep it briefer than that. But the Human Resources Department has issued an RFP earlier this year looking at the 4 different lines of health insurance coverage: medical, prescription drugs, vision, and dental. And we've been hard at work analyzing those different lines and the different bidders that we've had. We had a really good response, and we got some very competitive bids. For the medical line, we decided to recommend Priority Health. They represented not only a better financial savings, saving us about $2 million overall in the course of the 3-year contract, but also they represent a good strategic partner going forward for how we can manage our health insurance costs, as well as provide our members and their families tools and resources to help manage their health coverage. For the prescription drug side, we decided to recommend Disclosed RX. That was a financial savings, primarily led that one, as they could save us potentially $9 million over the course of the 3-year contract. So as you probably know, prescription drug costs are rising very rapidly, not only for the city, but also for society as a whole. So we need a good partner to help us wrangle those costs down and to keep them in check. For the vision coverage, we would like to stay with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. They've been managing our vision plan since 2020, and they've done a really good job with that. Their admin fees are increasing slightly, but the claims are expected to stay relatively the same. And the same is true for Delta Dental. We'd like to stay with our partner, Delta Dental of Michigan, and they've been managing our plan since 2017. They've been a good partner. Again, their admin fees are going up slightly, but the claims are expected to stay the same. So what you can see on the memo, the administrative cost would be about $3.8 million, but we're anticipated to save about $11 million overall over the course of these 4 lines in 3 years. So with your approval, we'd like to get these contracts in place to begin January 1st of 2024.
Very good. Colleagues, any questions about that? No. Well, great. I know last time you guys did this, you saved us a bunch of money on health insurance, so.
Yep.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those same sign? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Resolution 8, resolution authorizing lease agreements with Verizon to utilize Knapp and Leonard Street water tanks for communication purposes.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Mr. Jernberg, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. How are you this morning?
Great.
What you have in front of you today is simply renewals, basically renegotiating renewals for Verizon to utilize our towers for their antenna. The previous agreements are 25 years old, so they've been good partners for a while for us, and getting these extended, renegotiated and extended for another 25 years with increases every 5 years of 10% is good for us.
Very good. Colleagues, questions about this? All right, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Item 9, resolution rescinding and replacing proceeding number 92640 to authorize an agreement with Hotel and Leisure Advisors for a feasibility assessment of the Indian Trails Golf Course in an amount not to exceed $79,800.
Good morning, Fiscal Committee.
Moved and supported.
Sorry.
Here, go ahead.
Laura
Excited.
Claypool with the Parks Department. So what you have in front of you is a resolution to approve an agreement with Hotel and Leisure Advisors for a feasibility study for a golf entertainment venue and potential new clubhouse at Indian Trails Golf Course. This request just builds on the continued success that the golf course has seen with significant growth over the past 5 years, largely due to innovation and customer service excellence. H&LA's proposal really highlighted some unique approaches to the market analysis, both financial and doing an economic impact. They are partnered with Architectural Design Consultants Incorporated, which will do the actual design and costing for the facility. And ironically, ADCI has recently worked with First Tee of Wisconsin, so they have specific understanding and knowledge of what we are attempting to accomplish in Indian Trails Golf Course. H&LA is a very well-respected leader in this environment across the country, and so we're very confident in the product that they will be able to deliver to us.
Very good. Colleagues, questions about this one? All right, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 10, resolution authorizing an agreement with Mel Trotter Ministries for an amount not to exceed $200,000 for personal storage operations.
So moved.
Support.
That's pretty short for Ms. Bohach.
Thank you. Good morning. So this will be our entering into our third year of this partnership with Mel Trotter to provide personal storage for persons who are unhoused. You can see that in the memo, we provided you with some of the outcomes that have been achieved, and it continues to be a really important program. And I think in particular, as we move forward with some of the ordinances that have recently been adopted.
Very good. Colleagues, questions or comments? Well, thank you for this continued investment in creating these outcomes. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those same sign. Motion carries. Item 11, resolution accepting a $6.6 million grant award and approving an agreement with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for fiscal year 2022 lead-based paint hazard reduction program.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported.
And this is exciting news. This is our 9th grant with HUD for this particular program with the Office of Healthy Homes. And $6.6 million is our largest request and award. Our previous grant award was in 2019. We received $4.2 million. This allows us to continue our program that will close out December 31st of this year. It's intended that we will have an agreement hopefully in place by November, so it'll be a seamless transition into the new program.
Very good. Questions, comments? All right. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 12, resolution authorizing a budget substitution for $24,100 for LaGrave Fire Station structural repairs.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Mr. Berkman, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. So last year, we awarded a contract to McGraw Construction to make some structural repairs to some failed beams and fill in an areaway at the LaGrave Fire Station. We're nearing completion, and the project contingency was utilized to handle a number of unforeseen items that came up over the course of the project. So we did have Commission's approval for a scope increase on September 5th to the contract to cover one remaining item that needed to be handled in terms of a steam vent that needed to be rerouted through the roof. And so asking for your approval of this budget substitution of $24,100 to cover that additional item.
Very good. Colleagues, questions? All right, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 13, resolution authorizing budget substitution, $464,324 for Market Avenue Pump Station North Header Flow Meter.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported.
All right, so this project was awarded in July to Allied Mechanical Services, and it will replace a significant flow meter at the Market Avenue Pump Station, which services a substantial portion of the north and west sewer service area of our city and beyond. So asking for your approval of this substitution of $464,324 between sewer system fund project accounts to fully fund the project.
Very good. Questions? All right, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 14, resolution authorizing budget substitution, $296,337.05 from State Street from Lafayette to Madison.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported.
So this project will reconstruct the brick street pavement from on-state from Lafayette to Madison, including new water mains, storm sewer, sanitary sewer, bike lanes, ADA ramps, and street trees. The estimated total project costs are just over $2 million. We have a $500,000 federal grant, so the project is being administered through MDOT. Seeking your approval of this budget substitution between water and sewer system fund project accounts to move the necessary funding into place for the project, and construction will take place next summer.
Very good. Colleagues, questions? All right, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Item 15, ordinance amending Section 1 of the Budget Ordinance 2023-15 for fiscal year 2024, Amendment Number 3.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Mr. Sandy, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. We have 10 items before you today. I'll give a brief overview of each. The first item is a request from the Fire Department to hire a recruit class. We've had a disparity over the years in terms of how we approach budgeting for recruit classes between the police and fire department. The police department, we've always incorporated into the adopted budget, where the fire department, we bring an amendment, so we do intend to align those this upcoming budget cycle. Specifically, this request is for $1,574,000 in order to hire a recruit class of 22. 13 of those firefighters will be in addition to the permanent personnel roster. The remaining 9 is to cover normal attrition due to retirements. This is for a 6-month recruit class running from November to April. It is considered largely budget neutral in that it's going to be regular payroll versus overtime. And on the department's memo, they did a good job of spelling out some benchmarks that they did to other comparable cities in terms of public safety expenditures, percent of general fund, and just variance between police and fire expenditures. Item number 2 is from the Planning, Design, and Development Department. It's simply to convert a position that's currently a temporary position to a permanent roster position. It's an office assistant 2. There is no additional appropriation requested for this. Item number 3 is for the Downtown Improvement District Snowmelt Fund for $72,000 to address various leaks on Monroe Center. Item number 4 is from the Community Development Department. This is for our affordable housing initiatives. This request is for just under $5 million to support housing development projects that create or rehab approximately 215 housing units. The City Commission authorized these funding awards back in May of this year. Item number 5 is for the 61st District Court for their Michigan Drug Court Grant Program. The court is receiving $60,000 in additional grant funding, as well as recognizing some increased processing fees beyond what they budgeted. So in total, we will appropriate an additional $86,000 in the 61st District Court Grants Fund. Item number 6 is for the acquisition of property at 4024 Kalamazoo Avenue. The Economic Development Department has been working on this for the fire department. We're going to utilize $31,000 in general fund contingent account funding to cover the closing costs for this property. This specific parcel was not anticipated in the original budget amendment for these properties. Item number 7 is for the Parks and Recreation Department. This is related to the Grand Rapids Children's Fund. This is a checkbox on the income tax forms that individuals have the opportunity to donate funding to the Children's Fund each year when they fill out their tax forms. This fund has accumulated just over $155,000, and the Parks Department is requesting to utilize $32,000 to expand programming opportunities and purchase a trailer wrap, supplies and equipment for their outdoor excursion trailer. Item number 8 is also from the Parks and Recreation Department related to forestry operations. This will also be a contingent account request in the amount of $211,250, and this is intended to address the forestry backlog of priority 2 prunings that the department does not currently have financial capacity in their operating fund to address. Item number 9 is from Our Community's Children. This is for several grant and contribution awards. The first is from the Grand Rapids Community Foundation, totaling just under $200,000. This award supports integration of the T2C studio services with the Challenge Scholars Program. This award was approved by the commission on July 11th. The second is a contribution from the Doug and Maria DeVos Foundation totaling $25,000, and this will support the Grow 1000 Academy. Lastly, we are going to recognize and appropriate member dues revenue received in support of the GLR grant totaling just under $32,000. This will support the Extended Learning Opportunity Network. No local match is required for any of these grants or contributions. The last item today is the purchase of 1500 Scribner Avenue and also includes several parcels on Turner Avenue. This funding will be appropriated from 3 sources: the general operating fund of approximately $900,000, the motor equipment capital fund of about $4.1 million, and lastly, the facilities management fund of approximately $2.2 million. This will be to authorize payment on settlement costs. These properties will be closed, I believe it's either this Thursday or Friday, and these amounts are being allocated in accordance with our public works departments that are currently located at the 201 Market site. Lastly, you will see that our contingent balance after the 2 items that are being utilized sits at just under $1.2 million.
Very good. Colleagues, questions about any of these items? All right, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 16 is our bid list resolution for September 19th, 2023. Colleagues, any questions about any of the items on the bid list?
So moved.
Support.
All right. Sorry, moved and supported. All right, with no questions, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. On to our warrant report for August 23, 2023 through September 5, 2023. Mr. Comptroller.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
For the period referenced, the city released cash payments totaling just under $37.1 million. That includes approximately $5.2 million for employee payroll expense and $326,000 for income tax warrants. In terms of quantities, 678 income tax refunds were issued and 874 accounts payable checks were issued. And the details of all the checks and electronic payments exceeding $20,000 are contained on the following pages.
Very good. Colleagues, questions from us? All right, with that report will be received and filed. And our final item on the agenda this morning is the Treasurer's Report for period August 23, 2023 through September 5, 2023. Mr. Treasurer.
Good morning, Commissioners. With our report today, we just kind of want to give you a view of kind of where our money sits right now. So as you see, we've got investments planned all throughout the entire maturity range out to 30 years even. Our policy allows us to do an average weighted period of 7 years. But that means, as you see, most of our maturities are usually 5 years and less. So it still allows the ability to put some out longer when we find investments that are really advantageous to us to hold those longer. What that does is it helps us continue to earn good interest rate return over the long haul. So we're prepping this whole portfolio so that when we hit another recession, or we hit rates when rates are now lower, we're going to hopefully maintain like a 2.75% to 3.25% continue earnings on our money. That was the whole course of structure we did when I started, was in the middle of the downturn, was the fiscal crisis of 08, 09. And from that point in time, we were bouncing around 0 to 0.25% for almost 6 years. Well, trying to preface it, I hope rates will go up. I know they'll go up at some point in time, but I hope they go up next week, next quarter, next year. We're trying to take hope out of that equation. We want to make sure that we have methodically planned for these things to be out there for a specific period of time so that they're continuing to earn us good money, and we're not going to get caught in that position where we have no place to put our funds, earning just very, very small dollars. Our challenge right now, though, as you see, we have a lot of our money is clumped in just the 0 to 4 years, 0 to 5 years. And so right now we're benefiting from that big spike we have that's out maybe 1 year because interest rates still are high. We're still getting 5.25% on our money, ready money for the current period of time. But when the market turns, we have to be prepared. And so that's what we look to the fiscal committee, to the city commission as a whole, and to the executive office as we plan our major purchases. When are these funds going to be needed? Because at some point in time when that interest rate starts to drop, it's going to change that yield curve that we show. And we want to make sure that we're not caught in a position where we're losing opportunity costs by not placing our money out further, where we're going to have a better return out 4, 5, 6, 7 years and forego some of the quick money right now for longer term success in the future. So that was kind of the idea of the report this time, is to show you what we're looking at right now. And so over the course of the next year, 2 years, as we're committing to the amphitheater and potentially a soccer stadium and other large term investments, we want to start pushing some of this money out a little bit further, because as we bond for those types of activities, we're going to have to make payments all throughout those next 10, 20, 30 years. And so we would then shift our money out to try to time when we'll need those funds to pay for those debts. So that's where we are right now. We still are at $580 million in reserves in cash, and we're at 2.72%. And we're continuing to reinvest the monies that are earning lower percentages right now out into higher yielding items.
Very good. Colleagues, questions for the treasurer? All right. With that, the report will be received and filed. And with that, we will adjourn our meeting here at 8:58. Thank you, everyone.
(9:15), and we can go ahead and call this Community Development Committee to order. I have a different face on here, but Commissioner Moody is out today, and the mayor is working on some other things, so I'm filling in with my colleagues. Nice to see you all. We just have a few agenda items. The first is a resolution approving a construction agreement and accepting public utilities easement for the Brayburn Plan. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Is this Mr. Berkman?
Good morning, Commissioners. So this is to serve a single-family home development consisting of 8 lots, serving those lots with sewer and water. Project is located north of Ada Drive and east of Forest Hill Avenue in Grand Rapids Township. So seeking your approval of the construction agreement and also the acceptance of the utilities easement, allowing us to maintain the infrastructure once installed.
Colleagues, do you have any questions for Mr. Berkman? All right. Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, that carries. Thank you. Next is item number 2, a resolution approving a professional services agreement for construction management services with Rockford Construction Company for Lion Square in the amount of $10,321,660 with a total amount not to exceed $12,462,996. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported, colleagues. Is this Mr. Berkman again? I should just assume that's all you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I've got the full slate today, but yes, we've been talking about this project for many years, and pleased to report that we are moving forward and ready to for your approval of this award. So the project will revitalize the segment of Lion between Monroe and the Grand River, creating a shared use street that will include a park, river trail connection, an overlook, brick pavers, a snow melt system, new utilities, outdoor fireplace, seating, lighting, trees, and other supporting infrastructure, while still keeping that area accessible for vehicles accessing the parking ramp as well as trucks accessing those truck docks. Project stakeholders utilized a qualification-based selection process to select Rockford as the construction manager, and we previously brought before you a pre-construction services agreement, which they have fulfilled and now have sought bids. And so they've established that guaranteed maximum price in the amount that was read of $10,321,660 as contained within the professional services agreement that I'm seeking your approval of. That total cost of just over $12.4 million will come from the DDA, the Capital Improvement Fund, flood wall bonds, and other private contributions that the DDA is receiving. The bond amount of approximately $9.5 million will be funded 80% by the DDA and 20% by the city. And I know Mr. Kelly is here on behalf of DGRI and the DDA. They approved this at their meeting last week as well. So construction is anticipated to begin in October and will continue into next year. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, colleagues?
I just have a comment and a question. I walked by this for our prize this past weekend and was thinking about how cool this will look when it's done. So I'm excited to see that coming to fruition. And then what's the tentative end date for construction?
The end of next year. I mean, it'll take a majority of next construction season. So they'll start this year with work along the flood wall, which is an ideal time with river levels low, and then the next phase will be just east of that onto over to Monroe. So
thank you.
I'll just add, yeah, it's great to see this, the timing and the time frame. And when you said October, I'm like, oh, that's coming up here very soon. So, Mr. Kelly, was there anything that you wanted to add? Feel free to. Just wanted to recognize again that he was here.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, Commissioners. Just wanted to add thanks to the city, particularly Mr. Berkman and Kristen Fouth, who have been project managing this throughout. Really appreciate the partnership and glad to see this project moving forward. It's been many years.
Sounds like a lot of good work by the engineering department, so thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Kelly. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Next is a resolution approving an agreement with the Michigan Department of Transportation, or MDOT, for improvements on Colwell Avenue and Kenneshay Industrial Park Drive, and authorization of $678,265 for the local share of project costs. Do you have a motion?
Support.
Moved and supported. Thank you, colleagues. Mr. Berkman?
Yes, so we have two Transportation Alternative Program grants, or TAP grants, that total just over $350,000 for sidewalks to be installed along these two corridors, specifically on Colville between Lake Michigan and Bridge, and then a pathway between Richmond and Walker. And then also on Ken O'Shea Industrial Park Drive, that's essentially a long cul-de-sac east of Eastern, that sidewalks will be installed along. Project will be administered through MDOT because of the TAP funding, and they will be receiving bids on this on October 6th, with construction anticipated to take place beginning in the spring of next year. So asking for your approval of the agreement with MDOT, and then also that authorization of the local share of $678,265 coming from the Vital Streets Fund.
Questions for Mr. Berkman? I think this is not my area of the city, but I know many of us have areas where there are not that connectivity and sidewalks, and I think, we've been talking a lot about pedestrian safety and speeding, and so I'm sure this will be a welcome addition in the First Ward. All right, hearing no other questions, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Next is a resolution accepting the Transportation Asset Management Plan.
So moved.
Moved and supported.
So asset management ensures that public funds are spent as effectively as possible to maximize the condition of, in this case, our transportation system. It provides a transparent decision-making process that allows the public to understand and the technical and financial challenges that we have as we manage our infrastructure with the budget limitations that we all deal with. In particular, our city is responsible for maintaining over 600 miles of streets, 23 bridge structures, over 300 culverts, and over 250 traffic signals, flashers, and rectangular rapid flashing beacons, all of which are covered in this plan. So this plan provides an inventory of these transportation-related assets and condition, how we maintain them, and our plans to improve their overall condition. So back in 2018, Michigan passed Public Act 325, which required agencies to develop an asset management plan. Grand Rapids was already well ahead of that, already having much of this in place. But we submitted our formal plan to the state through the Transportation Asset Management Council originally in September of 2020. TAMC then reviewed the plan and determined that it met the requirements of the Public Act. So per the act, every 3 years, we're required to submit an update, and we're now at that point in the cycle. So asking for your approval or formal acceptance, essentially, of this plan so that we can go ahead and submit that in October.
Colleagues, questions for Mr. Berkman? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Berkman, I have a question on this. As you mentioned, it was a number of assets, a number of pieces, something, again, Grand Rapids was ahead, and now is a requirement. But I'm guessing is part of some of the piece around, I know we've done quite a bit of work to try to reduce, our energy costs, make sure things are more efficient. Is that a significant part of the conversation as it relates to the asset management plan in terms of maybe perhaps achieving some of our sustainability goals?
And the city has a number of asset management plans. I mean, I'm continually surprised by, there's one for that. So there's certainly, I think, plans that are geared more towards this. This is more of the hard assets, so the pavement condition, the storm sewer conditions. Probably the only thing in here that draws power is our traffic signals, which, we've converted over time to LEDs or on occasion install roundabouts that use less power. And I know that always
this wasn't a
triggers other
setup.
comments,
I swear.
But I would say that would fall more under the realm of other asset management umbrellas.
Got it. Okay. I just was wondering why the state, kind of decided to do this, but obviously we know that, challenges with bridges, challenges with other infrastructure, aging infrastructure in this country really overall. Okay. I do swear it wasn't a setup about roundabouts. All right. Hearing no other questions, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Okay, motion carries. And that concludes our business for the Community Development Committee. Thank you. We're adjourned at 9:25.
Hello, Miss Stacy Stout. It's good to see you back in City Hall. All right. All right. We'll get started momentarily, everyone. Okay, perfect. Perfect. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Committee of the Whole on this beautiful September morning, September 19th. We're going to go ahead and get started today. Commissioners, just a couple things. I have a proclamation I'm going to get us started with today, an important proclamation, and then we have one resolution, one action item before us, and then we have a briefing, which is our annual performance report. So we'll get updated on that by our city manager and Miss Allison Sutter. And then we have 4 executive sessions. So I think before we go into the briefing, I'll call for executive session. That will take place down in 601. And then after that, after executive session, the next thing on our agenda is public safety, and that's at 1 p.m. today. And then as a reminder, we do have an annual performance review with our treasurer, Mr. John Globinski, and I'll call for that as part of our executive session, but that will be at 2 o'clock today. Oh, and civil service. What time is civil service? 3. Thank you. We should start putting that on this sheet. We should start putting civil service.
Duly noted.
Thank you. All right, so with that, I'll get started. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to ask Mr. Brandon Davis and team to join me. I see we have a lot of our community partners here as well. They're welcome to come up as I read this proclamation for National Hispanic Heritage Month. Is that right? Hello. Come on up.
Morning.
How are you, Mr. Guillermo?
Doing well. Yeah. Good seeing you.
Look at this awesome team. Get up. You should get up here with us too. All right, so we are going to kick off today by taking a moment for this proclamation. Today we gather to celebrate National Hispanic Heritage Month, a time to honor the outstanding achievements of our Hispanic and Latino communities, and provides us with an opportunity to celebrate the rich history, culture, heritage, and enduring legacy of the Hispanic and Latino community in our city. Whereas in 1968, the United States Congress authorized by President Lyndon B. Johnson, or LBJ, to designate National Hispanic Heritage Week during the week encompassing September 15th and 16th. And whereas in 1988, President Ronald Reagan expanded the celebration to a month-long period, commencing on September 15th and concluding on October 15th. This starting date bears significance as it marks the independence anniversaries of several Latin American countries, including Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Mexico, and Chile. And whereas the theme for this year's celebration, Latinos Driving Prosperity, Power, and Progress in America, acknowledges the progress and contributions made by Hispanics and Latinos in propelling our country's prosperity forward and shaping its future. Whereas we acknowledge the countless ways in which the Hispanic and Latino communities have enriched the fabric of our society through their achievements and contributions. Now therefore, I, Rosalind Bliss, Mayor of our amazing city of Grand Rapids, do hereby proclaim Hispanic Heritage Month as a time to celebrate and honor the remarkable achievements, prosperity, growing power, and progress of our Hispanic and Latino community. This celebration presents an exciting moment for our community to recognize and appreciate their diverse contributions, mobilizing us to engage genuinely with the Hispanic and Latino community as valuable members of our city. Signed by Rosalind Bliss. And now I'll turn it over to Mr. Brandon Davis to say a few words and see if he wants to invite any of our community partners up to say a few words as well.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Commission, City Manager, for this proclamation. We know that it would be impossible for us to really to remember every achievement that's been made by a member of our Hispanic or Latino community member in 1 month. But we're excited to have this time set aside to remember the great accomplishments, the great achievements, the great additions to our community locally, to our nation, and to the world. So thank you for this proclamation, and I would invite any community member that's interested. Guillermo?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mayor, City Commissioners. Thank you for having us here, and thank you for this beautiful proclamation. This really makes me proud as a Latino. I moved to this country 14 years ago, full of hope, full of energy, full of passion, and I feel that this city is a city that really welcomes all of us and has many, many things for us. As Brandon said, I would love that this is not just 1 month, a year. We need Latinos involved every day in city politics, nonprofits, corporations, businesses. We are part of this fabric. We are part of this community. So I hope that in my, hopefully, 50 years that I have left in this city, I can see progress, and I can see really that Latino power that the mayor mentioned, in the proclamation. I see a different community in the next 25 years. As many of you know, the expected growth of the Latino community in the Greater Grand Rapids area, it's 130%. So how are we preparing to get all of us involved in every aspect in this society? How are we training Latinos? How are we certifying Latinos? How are we providing access to capital to Latinos? So we have an incredible opportunity today to continue this work, and I invite all my partners, every organization here, not just in Grand Rapids, but West Michigan, to join the West Michigan Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in these endeavors and make this a beautiful community for all. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be back in City Hall. My name is Stacy Stout. I would just like to recognize the Michigan Local Government Latino Network. We have many of the leaders here. If you could raise your hand. I know they do so much work year-round and really help make this possible and have just excellent programming happening this month. And also I'd like to shout out the Office of Equity and Engagement that continues to embed equity throughout operations. But as we know, it's not one office's responsibility. It's all of your responsibility and all of the departments. And so it's just a great honor to be here. I'd also like to recognize Latina history with Commissioner Isasi being the first Latina on the City Commission. And we thank you for all that you've done. Thank you.
Colleagues, join us. I know, all right, we'll break up. We'll throw a little color throughout. Both sides of Brandon. All right. Squeeze in. Everybody. Right. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate your thanks. It was good to see All right. Thank you, everyone. All right, that will take us to our one and only action item before us today. This is a resolution scheduling a special meeting of the City Commission on October 31st. Can I get a motion?
Moved.
Support. All right, moved and supported. City Manager, you want to say anything about this?
Thank you, Mayor. This will help us in our conversation of our planning for the future. After we consider the performance year-end report today, we'll also consider some horizon topics and important items that we need to focus on moving forward.
Great. And Commissioners, you should have this on your schedules. We have it tentatively scheduled from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., so please make sure you're able to be here for that allotted time. Any questions or comments? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, so before we jump to the briefing, I am going to call for executive session, and let me walk you through our executive sessions today. We have 4 executive sessions, one related to pending litigation, one relating to real estate transactions, one related to a legal opinion, and one for appointed officials' annual review. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support?
All right, moved and supported, and this is a voice vote, so I'll start down here with Commissioner Perdue.
Yes.
Commissioner Isas? Commissioner Knight?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Connor?
Yes.
And Commissioner Robbins?
Yes.
And I am a yes. Thank you. All right. So again, Commissioners, immediately following Kyle, we will go down to room 601. And with that, I will turn it over to our city manager for our annual performance presentation and update. You should have a copy of the PowerPoint in front of you that you can follow along with. I think we'll get through. Are we going to break it up, City Manager, into
Yes.
2 portions?
Yes.
So we'll break it up into 2 portions. So we'll get through the first half, we'll pause to see if you have any questions, and then we'll move forward with the second portion. It looks like our Deputy City Manager, Ms. Kate.
They're just getting in the ready position.
Organized, all right. I'll just turn it over to City Manager.
All right, thank you. And
All
if I
right.
can get some assistance from someone to advance the slides, appreciate it. Thank you again, Mayor and Commissioners, for allowing time today to discuss year-end review, performance activities, and what we want to look at is the last fiscal year, those important areas of accomplishments, as well as major issues that we need to continue moving forward. And this will serve as the foundation for our time, as you've just recently approved on October 31st. If you look at the outline of the series of events today, we're having this conversation, and we'll also continue our planning efforts at our staff leadership retreat in October prior to your commission prioritization workshop. And after that, that begins that puts things in motion for us to start considering the fiscal year 25 budget. And departments will be working on that this winter and analyzing the requests. And then we'll have one more opportunity in February where we'll come back and give an organizational performance update. And that will serve as kind of a last check-in for me to hear not only where we are performing relative to fiscal year 24, but any other adjustments that we need to consider in terms of prioritization before submitting the budget in April and your adoption in May. So next slide, please. And as always, we consistently reinforce our values of our organization. I do want to point out that the artwork that you see here has been, it's not a formal entry, but it is on display as on display for Art Prize in front of City Hall. But our values are more than just something on display. We really try to reinforce it as part of our workforce culture, from accountability, collaboration, customer service, equity, innovation, and sustainability. You just saw the demonstration of our values around equity in terms of the proclamation the mayor just read, as well as other things that you'll hear in the report. But also this report today demonstrates the value of accountability. Next slide. There are, in terms of our 6 strategic priorities, what we've been working off of is the commission focus areas and the key topics, and you'll see several of them. I won't go through them all in detail, but we'll report out on this today. And essentially, after the report, we'll do a check-in on October 31st and ask, are these the important focus areas and topics that we still will need to continue to focus on? Obviously, there are some on this list that have already been completed, and there are some that will remain ongoing and some that are in different phases of completion. And so we'll look forward to having that prioritization discussion on key initiatives on the 31st. Next slide. Just as a guide, you'll hear the kind of in each subject area, priority area, the reporting on what has been accomplished. And based on our 6 strategic priority areas and the over 108 strategies, there were 426 planned activities. And this year, about 76% of those activities were either completed or on track. And there were some that were disrupted because of fiscal issues, some that was disrupted because of staffing issues, and some that were just discontinued. And we'll talk a little bit about those as we review each priority area. Before I turn it over to the update on the first area of governmental excellence, I'd like to take this time to acknowledge the work of the staff. Obviously, both the performance and the performance reporting does not happen without a lot of committed staff. You'll hear from some of them today, but there are thousands of employees who are doing the job day in, day out, and we are very grateful for their work. But I do want to recognize our strategy officer, Allison Sutter, as well as a new addition to our fiscal services team under our CFO's direction, Mr. Eric Shannon, who have worked very hard on compiling the data for the report, along with the department directors, assistant city manager, deputy city manager, and the managing director. So much appreciation to them on those efforts, and we'll get right into the first section under governmental excellence. Mr. Matthews.
Thank you, City Manager. So the first area that we're going to talk about, the first priority that we're going to talk about is governmental excellence. And without running through point by point all of these items, there's really a theme that runs through all of these. One is ensuring that we continue to focus on equitable outcomes and equitable operations, so inside and outside the organization, but also a real focus on capacity building. So that's capacity building in our people, in our technology, in our structures to be able to do the work that we come to do every day. That's notable when we talk about establishing our plans, establishing the systems that are going to support what we do in the future. We've talked to you previously about some of that work when it comes to some of the big technology changes, including our ERP, as well as some of the planning that we're actively doing in terms of our facilities master plan. And then at the departmental level, things like the golf course master plan. This is really about making sure that we're taken care of now, but making sure that we're building towards the future. So when we look back at the last year, the question is, did we do what we say we were going to do? And if you look at this list, it clearly shows that our teams have really been focused on getting the things done that we said we were going to get done that are aligned with the priorities. You'll see here migration of PrimeGov. That is specifically so that we can better manage this process that we're in today, our agenda process. But it's not just about that. It's about operational improvements that come along with that. We've talked a long time, for instance, about having digital sign-up for speakers. This is going to give us the ability to do that. We've talked about making our meetings more transparent. This is going to give us the ability to post our meetings in a way that folks are going to be able to search for specific agenda items and then watch the conversation about those items. So it's not just a technology upgrade. It's really pointed at a number of the things that we've said are important. And I just use that as an example. You can say the same thing about ERP, both internally and externally. It's going to increase our ability to report out specifically on how we're performing as an organization, but it's also going to increase our ability to serve our communities, whether at the individual level, at the job applicant level, at the vendor level, to be able to provide a higher level of service and do that more efficiently. I could say the same thing about the facilities master plan, about our EV conversion plans. Really, when you run down this list, it all follows those themes that I talked about at the beginning. If you look moving on, some of the other things that we're doing, you have a long list of the master plan, strategic plans, there in the second bullet that are all notable. These are all things that are establishing our present state and charting our future state on all of these major initiatives. We've used our strategic planning software to help empower those activities. And as the city manager noted, we've made investments in the areas where we said we needed to make investments. Hiring somebody to focus specifically on performance management and reporting helps the organization, but it also helps us to be able to report out to the community on, are we doing the things that we said we were going to do? In terms of recognition, in terms of establishing how we perform against our benchmarks, I will say that in the coming year, we're going to be doing another community survey to look at that citywide. But we also have our accreditation processes. So Parks and Recreation has initiated that process for national accreditation. You'll note only 153 of 10,000 agencies have achieved that honor, but they have started that process not just to see whether or not they can be number 154, but also to assess the areas where we need to continue to focus and improve. When you look at the metrics, we like to see green. We've got a lot of green here. We've got a couple of blues that we're actively measuring. This exhibits that we're performing on some of the key metrics that we talked about when we talk about governmental excellence. When we talk about the capital investment that we're making in our neighborhoods of focus, that's something that we present every year when we present the budget to make sure that those things are tracking. Maintaining our fund balance, of course, is critical, and that's something that we look at on a 5-year rolling basis. When we look at how we're serving our community, one of the things that we look at is how easy are we making it for the community to be able to transact and work with the city. You see that reflected in the online payments. And then we saw there at the beginning the number and percent of strategic plan metrics that are measured and available. And then, of course, how are we performing on those? So at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Barron. She's going to talk about economic prosperity and affordability.
All right, and just as a refresher, the focus of this priority area is on residents, employees, and businesses having pathways to financial growth and security. So again, the format you're going to see represented here, repeated here throughout each of the priority areas. Just a refresher on what the objectives are under this priority, as well as those particular initiatives or projects that we set out to pull on in fiscal year 2023 that we thought would have a direct impact on some of our priority areas here. I do want to call out one initiative here, the Small Business Revolving Loan Fund that was allocated in fiscal year 2023. We did have a disruption in that plan during that fiscal year. We actually reported out on that at the mid-year and also during the budget presentation for fiscal year 2024. But again, we are being transparent about what we set out to do. So that Small Business Revolving Loan Fund has been repurposed in fiscal year 2024, same amount of money, but still small business support, but not a revolving loan fund. That has proven to be a complex structure to work with ARPA dollars and the guidelines that have been coming out of the federal government. So that will continue in fiscal year 2024. Moving on to some of the key accomplishments, I do want to highlight the Affordable Housing Fund Board work. The Commission did approve the recommendations of the board in May of this year, and we anticipate 157 housing units flowing from those recommendations, as well as support for eviction prevention and unhoused youth programs as part of those awards. So that was completed. The board recommendations were completed in fiscal year 23. There will be work ongoing into this fiscal year. We're currently, with the support of the Community Development Department, entering into funding agreements with each of those recipients, and we will continue to monitor progress. Again, this is the theme of the dollars need to be spent within the timeline that ARPA defines, so we'll be continuing to monitor that compliance. Also wanted to point out the RAP 2.0 timeline. So that's another one that is extending into this year. The applications were submitted at the end of June, so the end of the fiscal year 23. We expect to hear from the state later this month. I also want to highlight, some of the more refined work that community development is doing, and there's a lot of impressive statistics on that slide. We tend to focus on unit production, how many more housing units are happening, how many more people are getting housed, which is very important work. But I do want to flag these programs that tend to help support keeping people in their homes or supporting our equity values. So making sure people understand what the rules are around housing discrimination, how they can get support if they believe there has been discrimination at play, and ensuring that we're working with both landlords and tenants to have an equitable housing environment here in Grand Rapids. Moving on to additional accomplishments more on the business sector. You heard a full report from our Office of Equity and Engagement and Economic Development departments earlier this summer about all of our MLBE efforts, as well as things that we will focus on in the future in order to remove some of the obstacles and barriers that we have identified by focusing particularly on the construction industry. We will continue to push that work forward. You also heard more detail from the Urban League earlier this month about the results of the contract and support that we had with your funding in fiscal year 2023, and we expect that to pay ongoing dividends with the Black Business Voice and Advisory Consortia. Ongoing business attraction and retention work is always underway. Again, tends to fly under the radar, but here you see how important that is, both with new retail businesses and with good high-paying jobs in the tech sector. Finally, in our role to be a destination city, we continue to see really good success with the Office of Special Events. Our visitors and participation in special events is up way up above pre-pandemic levels now. And importantly, with your continued support through the budget process, we are able to build capacity with smaller organizations and smaller event organizers to be putting on those cultural events and other things that present a full array of opportunities for folks in Grand Rapids, the region, and elsewhere to come visit. I would be remiss if I did not comment on the agreement you all entered into in fiscal year 2023 to continue to support Art Prize. That obviously launched last week, and you see evidence of it around the city. Really important to have the support of our partners at DGRI and Kendall College to keep that signature event in Grand Rapids. Just a little bit of a horizon topic for you as we look at fiscal year 2023 and the success and the continued growth of our economy here in Grand Rapids. We gave a more detailed report about some of these topics to the Economic Development Project team at their meeting earlier this month, but did want to flag a few highlights for you. The growth that we're seeing throughout the city continues to support a lot of our strategic plan objectives and continues to make this an attractive place for folks, our current residents and future residents. But it does also have some pressures associated with that. So you can see we have a lot on our plate now. We're very successful with getting some state and federal funding for a whole host of priorities around Grand River redevelopment. So we have Greenway grant dollars now that are flowing into city riverfront park projects and some access trail projects. We also have additional state funding for some real transformational work in our parks system, including the MLK Park Lodge complete reimagining, and fire facilities, new fire facilities to continue to support our growing community. Private development also remains at record high levels with permit valuations last year at $450 million, and they continue to see that sort of level. So that's all great news, but it does put pressure on some city staffing levels, particularly with again, you've heard me say it a million times. You could all say it with me now. A lot of the dollars we're using are ARPA dollars. They all need to be spent in this window. So we don't have that flexibility of scheduling things and sequencing things in a way to meet our staff capacity that we would sort of traditionally rely on to handle getting this volume of work through. So we presented information to EDPT about staffing loads across a number of departments, including parks, engineering, economic development, and our planning and development department, and do anticipate bringing forward an FTE proposal to the commission next month. We are currently taking the feedback we receive from EDPT and building that into the information we will bring forward to the full commission. So with that, just looking at a few of the metrics, again, that we monitor for the strategic plan in this priority area, I want to point out there are a few things in red. So you heard a little bit more about this in the inclusion plan commitment report that you received earlier this summer, but we have identified some barriers in allowing MLBEs to continue to scale up and meet the demand that exists through both our own capital projects and the economic development incentive programs. So we're going to continue to focus on trying to find ways to remove those barriers and make sure that we can grow that sector of the economy. We also continue to not have as many housing units come online as we would like to have come online. So you all have had multiple reports about this and the demand that continues to grow for housing units. We are doing work under your direction with the Planning Commission to look at zoning rules that may, again, try to loosen up or expand opportunities for units to come online. And you continue to support subsidies for affordable housing units. So we will continue to push and hope to see us meet the need over the next 5 years in that regard. And with that, I will turn it over again to Mr. Matthews.
Okay, and I know there was a question at the beginning if we we're going to break this up and have an opportunity for questions. We're going to cover engaged and connected, then we're going to pause. So if you all have questions, we can answer those before we move on. So engaged and connected, I have a personal connection to this. My professional past is in communications and engagement. One of the things when we talk about this work, really one of the themes that you're going to see this year is that we're starting to make investments in the things that we've said we want to see get done. So when we talk about being more transparent, being more accessible, having more intentionality about the way by which we engage, the way by which we communicate with and to the community, that much of that is reflected in the things that we set forth in FY23, and we're able to make a lot of progress in that respect. The other thing you'll see in the objectives here is a lot of it is continuing to strengthen and refine the things that we know that are working. When we talk about things like the Neighborhood Summit, when we talk about the Neighborhood Match Fund, those are things that we want to lean into. They've proven out to work, and it's how can we build around those things and continue to improve. So if we look at the select accomplishments over the past year, we did make investments, as I mentioned, in the communications department to bring somebody on specifically to work in the communications campaign space. We have a lot of initiatives that take place throughout the course of the year, and really building a full-throated campaign for communications around those is important, and you need to have somebody here that's thinking about those things, and you need to be able to invest in that. You also see a continued expansion of our accessibility. It's worth noting, we just had a proclamation on Hispanic Heritage Month. We're continuing to invest in our language accessibility. That was a planning process that started a few years ago out of the Equity and Engagement Office. They piloted it over FY23 with a number of departments, and you're likely to start to see departments budgeting based on that plan going into this next fiscal year. Some of the other things that you've noticed over FY23, we did roll out an enhanced Commission Night Out program, and the whole idea was to utilize that as a community engagement opportunity beyond the proceedings of the City Commission meeting, and continuing to refine Neighborhood Summit, which was very successful this year. Change of venue, a little bit of a change of programming, and that's been positive. One of the other things we want to make sure that we're doing is involving the community in the decision-making processes, but also involving the community in our planning processes. That's one of the things that the water utility's done over this last year. They've gotten more intentional about surveying their customers and utilizing that data to create their operational plans for the following year. That neighborhood organization funding, whether that's through Equity and Engagement or CDBG, continues to bear fruit in terms of building capacity in our neighborhoods. You see the numbers there of the folks that were involved over the last year. You also see in that third bullet the work that aligned with the community master plan process. Then the last two here I want to note. One is that we did invest in a community engagement manager position this year, and she's actively working on developing the strategy that we've talked about for all 4 of the budget cycles that I've been here. And you've seen some of that work already taking place, kicking the tires on some different tactics. Some of that you'll see this evening when we go to commission night out. And then the last one is participatory budgeting. I'm glad to say that all 3 of our tranches of RFPs have gone out. We already brought forward 2 contracts that you all approved. Later this month, we're going to have 2 more contracts coming forward for you all to approve. The 3rd tranche of RFPs closes on October 6th, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to bring those forward probably in early November. At which point we'll have all of those programs in flight. I do want to note that one of the things that we're being intentional about on that process is not just to award the contract, but we have a parallel contract with the Johnson Center that we're pairing with each one of these contractors so that they can develop and implement a measurement plan to see that those programs, or if those programs are achieving the objectives that the community set out and approving them in the first place. So when we look at our metrics, you'll see here, one of the items that we had tagged as a key metric on engaged and connected has to do really with customer service, and that is how are we responding to 311 inquiries. You'll see the top number there has continued to improve. That number is how are our departments responding to requests once they make their way through the 311 system. So that speaks to the customer service orientation of every one of our departments that's providing service to the community. We do know, and we've had conversations about this in the past, that attracting and retaining personnel in 311 has been a challenge, and that we've made some operational and technological improvements to try to improve that experience, but that we still don't have those wait times exactly where it is that we want. And that's something that we'll talk about during the budget process as well. Our other measures here you'll see are in green coming out of 23, and we anticipate that those will stay positive moving into 24. So at this point, we'll open it up for any questions.
All right, thank you. I'll start with just a couple, and then I'll turn to my colleagues up here. Mine are mostly related to timelines. So 2 questions, and maybe DC Behrens can answer these for me. With regard to the zoning changes, when do we anticipate recommended amendments coming back to this body?
I'm going to phone a friend here. Around January, I am told. So I know they're in the process right now of working through the policy questions.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then my other follow-up question, and I should know this because I know I've been a part of a lot of meetings related to it, but I'm curious if we have a sense for the river restoration. When do we anticipate we'll be in a position to submit a modified design to Eagle to get the permit process started?
We are in the midst of defining that timeline right now with Eagle, so we have really a lot of good energy around the revised design. We are now asking them some nuanced questions, so for this is probably more in the weeds than y'all want, but we have to put together a permit application package that includes things like a wetland delineation, other kinds of professional reports, and what we're going through right now is that whole package and saying, can we use what we already have or do we need to update? And then that will tell us how long it will take our professional consultants to do the pieces that need to be updated to give you a better answer. We're pushing forward. I think there have been 3 meetings this week on those topics, and we have standing meetings every week to get you a better answer.
Great, thanks. All right, commissioners, questions? I'll start here with Commissioner Isasi.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you both and all the staff and city manager for the work that went into this and the presentation. I think we come here every other week, and sometimes it's hard to remember all the things that have been done. I think to the point about some of the pieces at the Economic Development Project team, and just even looking at some of these other pieces, we had that influx of dollars, right? And then we're getting to this point of execution. It seemed like a long time ago, but it's not. So I just have a few questions. Could you clarify? I know you talked about the revolving fund, and I do remember that, there was a lot of considerations and there's a lot of compliance pieces with that. So we're not going to do that, but then are we identifying how will that money go directly to businesses? Is that still in the planning phases? I just want to make sure I understood what you're saying.
So what we are exploring right now is whether we can target those funds, particularly in the construction MLBE area, and sort of pilot something on one of our own capital projects. So we're working with the engineering department and equity office to see, is there something we could take from those identified barriers report and learnings and actually pilot it in one of our own capital projects and then learn from there.
Okay.
So more to come as we develop alternatives that might be feasible.
Okay, but it'd probably be targeted with these.
Yes, that's the idea.
And if I could, Commissioner, that was specifically based on feedback that we heard when giving an update on the MLBE and economic inclusion program. And so I'm encouraged, it's just a matter of timing though, because those are ARPA funds, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. I would agree with the comments about events, and I'd love to see that was on social media and sharing about, come to a couple different events to learn about doing events. I thought, oh yeah, that's an obvious way to make sure that people, because it can be overwhelming when it's one-to-one, and I was really excited to see that, and I thought that was a good idea, so kudos to Ms. Pittman and others that are part of that special events team. I think these other two are maybe for Mr. Matthews around the language access piece. So I know you said we're in the final stages of doing a review of that. Will that review include, because I think we've certainly offered it. I think my question has been, how many people do we think are actually utilizing it? Do we need other methods? Will that be part of that review process?
Well, as is often the case, there are a lot of there are a number of answers to the question because it doesn't affect just operationally one thing or another. We know that the utilization, for instance, of the Spanish language YouTube resources is low. What we don't know is what the utilization of the printed materials are, and that is difficult to measure. One of the things that we've talked within the communications department about is how can we develop some Spanish language campaigns. This kind of goes back to having somebody that's focused on marketing communications campaigns. How can we put together some Spanish language campaigns to increase awareness, even that the Spanish language television resources are there, for instance? And then exploring some of the things that we've done in the past. For instance, we have a Spanish language radio interview that we do. We have a television program that we do, and they're going back and reevaluating how they might be able to reformat those or refocus those to be more effective. So it was a long answer to a short question. The answer in some cases is we're really not sure.
Okay.
Simply because it's difficult to measure. In the ones where we are sure, we know that we'd like to do some other things.
Okay. And then my last question is on, I know we made an additional position, I think that was maybe last month or a month before, around the FOIA request piece. So our FOIA Appeals Board, myself, Commissioner Robbins, and Commissioner Moody serve on that. It seemed, I don't know, I'm told that it's a lot for that body. I think in the past year, maybe I was kind of looking at Deputy City Attorney, maybe 5 or so appeals that have come to us. Most recently, there was one around just the length of time to complete. And, given the investment in drones, which is not, sort of an everyday thing like the dashboard cams and the body cameras, but I do think we were those early investors in the body cameras, but much like the ARPA funds, we probably didn't adjust for some of the individual work that would need to be done to create this, which is, sometimes I listen to a voicemail, I have to listen to it 3 times, right, to make sure I got all the information. So watching a video where there's things that are very consequential, it is the use of technology. So I know that's something that we discussed, referred it back to, I think, we felt like that wasn't in our jurisdiction because that was really on, in terms of staffing. But we know that has increased.
Yeah. Well, the FOIA system creates a more efficient and consistent process. What it doesn't address is what you just described. So searching, finding, and delivering documentation is pretty easy to do. The challenge is also, as you mentioned, with all of the digital records, maintaining the confidentiality that's required, redacting things, requires both an eye, but also the technical expertise to be able to do that. And you're right, that's something that we're continuing to refine. How exactly do we respond to that? And that's not something unique here in Grand Rapids. All communities are grappling with that as they expand the access to those digital assets.
Okay, thank you. I think that's something, I think we made a lot of investments to really improve our community and police relations, different tactics as it relates to, I was able to go through the Citizen Academy a few months ago, learning about those things. So I think, just kind of that whole continuum of public safety and transparency. I know I've heard transparency quite a bit today, and I appreciate that. My last question is for Ms. Behrens. So my question is around our Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board. And so I know there was a lot of work to go into that. Obviously, again, trying to utilize dollars that were one time. One of the things that we said we wanted to do as a priority was really to focus on those first time or small scale developers. And given, again, the timeline, it didn't work out. And I appreciate the transparency on that. I think we knew that, but we wanted to get the monies out and get those housing pieces on. We've also, I think, had this conversation with our committee as it relates to the changes in our brownfield legislation. Like, where do we identify where this money should go? And I think even just questions of like, how will the city define, first timers and small scale? And will this really go to like who's intended? So I know that was discussed in the past, but that might have been prior to our last commission. So I'd just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. 2 things that we have going on with the board related to that. So one is we did quite a debrief of that first RFP. And one of the things that really rose to the top in terms of lessons learned was, and for all the reasons that you just described, that we were not able to support first-time or small emerging developers with that pot of ARPA dollars. And there are a lot of reasons for it. It largely needed to be last dollars in. That means that for the deeply affordable projects, they've been through LIHTC. They have to have a relative level of experience and expertise to have gone through that process and have us be the last dollars in. So, but we did flag the need to look at each RFP as we put it together and make some deliberate decisions about, okay, what is the color of money? Can we be patient then as an investor in a particular project and be the first dollars in? Can we do some other kind of support with less restrictive dollars? And so we're putting together now work to help the board through those sort of deliberate decisions each time they have another RFP. The second thing we're doing is having a strategic retreat with the board next week. And so we're going to ask them to put together sort of a 3 to 5 year areas of focus and expect that conversation to then come up again. So as we think about how we grow the fund, there are city dollars committed to the fund, but how else can we grow the fund? Can we attract other people's money into the fund? As we focus on that, then think about RFP timing and RFP focus and circle back to that objective.
Thank you. Great. Thank you. City Attorney wants to respond, and then I'll come down here to Commissioner Perdue, and then Commissioner Knight, and then Commissioner Robbins. Go ahead.
Commissioner Sassi asked about the FOIA process, and so as FOIA coordinator, we've been looking at that process, and we've done a few things. We've looked at the non-police FOIA. We've implemented new technology for that. That's working out great, improve the efficiencies and become more user-friendly for the public. And so now we've taken a look as related to the police department. And you're right, there's been significant changes with technology, whether it's the in-car cameras, the body cams, and now with the, I don't want to say drones, unmanned aerial equipment that we incorporated. We raised our hand quickly and incorporated those technologies, but we didn't take a look at the changes that we need to implement as far as people resources. And so we have had recent conversation with the police department, the chief and members of his staff on some changes we can make towards efficiencies. And look, we've had an assessment done to try to figure out what are the needs and what are the changes. And they've been very open to the changes. And we're still having those discussions. Once we have it all together, of course, we're going to talk to the city manager and his team and try to figure out how we can do that better so that we can better serve our community.
Thank you. Thanks, City Attorney. All right, we'll go Commissioner Perdue, and then Commissioner Knight, and then Commissioner Robbins. I'll finish it up to see if Commissioner O'Connor has any questions. Are you good? Okay, go ahead.
All right, good morning. Thank you both. A few questions. I am looking at the page on, I think it's slide 17, just around housing, code compliance, owner-occupied homes, all things housing and affordability. So we talk a lot about new housing development, whether it's from the fund or private developers, and their correlation to AMI. We talk a lot about AMI. I'm really interested in seeing, so we have the bands of AMI. I'm interested in seeing how those new builds and those AMI bands correlate with income bands in the city. So I think about poverty rates in the city. I think about ALICE in the asset limited income constrained, those folks who are working, but between the cost of living and their wages are not making enough to really make ends meet outside of kind of survival budget. And I know over 40% of the city kind of falls in that poverty and ALICE bucket. And so I'm just trying to see how our family and couple and single folks in the city, how their economic realities align with what's going on in our housing market in terms of build and affordability. So I'm wondering if we might be able to see some comparison numbers around kind of, again, those income bands and how they correlate with AMI.
So,
and I don't know if that will be from you or from someone else, but I think that will be a helpful reference as we kind of constantly see this come in front of us.
We'll go back and see what exists from our housing needs assessment, but essentially an income distribution across the affordability bands, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So I know like 40% fall in, I don't have the breakdown. You have poverty, you have ALICE, but then also kind of those AMI correlate are all kind of just, they all use a different methodology. I'm curious of kind of where they overlap and so that we and the public can translate when we have, because I see, the 80% AMI being a huge focus of the Affordable Housing Fund. How does that correlate with our income bands and our income realities for folks in the city? That's kind of my thought process.
Okay, yep, we can see what already exists there and what we can provide on that. And then also just a little bit on the Affordable Housing Fund. There is more flexibility in those dollars, so that is also, there's some decision-making there about do we want to focus on real low or, that sort of 80% below, or some focus on 120% and below. Yep. It's just where are the gaps in the various stacks, because we do have needs across all the bands, but we'll see what we can provide you on that front.
Thank you. And then at some point, I would like to hear more about our efforts around vacancy and blight. This is a focus of feedback that I've gotten from a number of my neighborhood organizations and folks in the third ward about business districts, especially, or blocks of housing, but more so business districts that are vacant, that are blighted, security concerns, kind of environmental concerns related to that. So I would like to hear more about that at another time. And then relatedly, thinking about our small businesses, I have heard some concerns around security, lighting, cameras, things like that. And while we do have, excuse me, so I'm thinking about like our facade improvement program, right? We do have some avenues to support local businesses with improvements. I'm hearing that some of those items are not covered under facade. So are there other support available that we already have that we might be able to help them with? Is kind of what a question that I have for you all that I'm hoping I can get follow-up on. So those are kind of two questions and requests related to kind of the updates, and I think that's all I had. So thank you.
Great, thanks, good questions. Commissioner Knight?
Thank you all for your time and effort on this, and as we begin to delve into it and ask all these questions, hopefully y'all can be patient. One of the questions that I had was around on slide 14, I believe it is, when we look at our metrics on collections and improving that, we made some great strides in taking money from people that they need to pay for stuff. But how is our movement? And I know that Max presented on this, I think, earlier this year about some of the changes that they were making through the comptroller's office. But how are we making changes to really help contractors get paid a little bit quicker? Because understanding that a small business, sometimes they're giving out something that they don't have to perform a service, and then they need those payments back to pay the people that work for them. Again, I think I remember hearing something reported about that earlier this year, but just refreshing my memory on that. And then my second question is kind of all rolled together when we talk about the Small Business Revolving Fund, and the Black Business Voice Consortium, as well as the retail retention. We have the numbers on the number of businesses that have opened in all of these wars, but what are the numbers looking like for the businesses that were not able to be sustained during that time? And how can, if any, that revolving loan fund be coupled with trying to help those businesses that are on the fringe or on the edge to keep from, because that's what the retention piece is supposed to be for, right? So it's really great that we can get businesses open, but how are we working to really make sure that they are supported and sustained during those really difficult times? Because we can continue to open stuff, but if they can't be sustained, then they're going to continue to close. So what do those numbers look like, and how can, if at all, any of that revolving loan fund, I heard you say that it couldn't be implemented the way that you wanted to, but is there some creative ways that we can utilize some of that money to help sustain those businesses and even help support those that are coming online to make sure that they, don't get caught in that same cycle and close? Sorry, that was a lot.
I can try to answer the first question. I'll have to hand it over to Ms. Behrens for the second. I can only partially answer the first question. I wouldn't want to answer out of turn without involving both Comptroller and CFO's office, so we'll make sure that we get that to you. The one thing that I will say is that's really one of those foundational things when we talk about the ERP implementation. Is that it's going to streamline those processes, both in terms of invoicing and payment. We've spent the last couple of years really leaning into providing electronic payments as opposed to check-based payments. This is one of those areas where we're going to be able to improve our service by improving the backbone technology that's empowering us to provide the service. One of the advantages of going through that is that we're evaluating all the processes at the same time. Of course, the last thing you want to do is automate a bad process. So we're trying to eliminate any of those potential roadblocks now so that when we implement the new system, that's going to be able to better deliver for individuals, vendors that are receiving payment, our invoicing, vendor registration, and all of that. But I'll get a more detailed answer for you from the rest of the team.
Thank you.
So with respect to the business retention side of the answer, we can get you some more data about closed businesses, and how much we have there, so you see the full picture. A lot of the city-controlled tools to support small business are capital focused, capital improvement focused. We do, though, have the ability to connect businesses to other tools that we may be aware of. There is a significant revolving loan fund, for example, that the Urban League through county ARPA dollars is starting up now. So we do have the ability to make some of those connections, which is part of the business retention work, is just letting people be aware of other things they may not know about. But I can get you some more detail about those programs as well. But again, we tend not to have the access to sort of revolving loan kinds of funds to make payroll or meet your operating costs. Those don't tend to be city tools. We do, just one last point on that piece, though, I know the Equity Office, for example, piloted and continues to do some work through their contracting when we are contracting with vendors to allow some upfront payments in order to bridge that gap that you identified. And so again, that's another one of those things that we look at. How can we grow that throughout city contracting? But that is something that they've innovated, is that even a word? And have seen some success with.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I have one more, and it may be too soon for this to even have an answer, but we talked about in the economic prosperity and affordability, the 2 awards to housing support service providers, and if we have any feedback at all about the implementation of that and some of the outcomes.
We will track that over time. There is not significant reporting yet. They're just really getting through the funding agreement process and getting those, but we will have data over time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Good questions. Commissioner Robbins, and then after this question, we'll move on to the next section.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just have 2 quick questions under the engaged and connected community. So my first question, I know with the 311 average wait times you touched on, that being kind of caused by some different staffing issues, but just looking at the direction it's moving in versus our target being 30 seconds, it seems like there's a bit of a disparity there. So I'm just wondering, are we getting any consistent exit information from people who are turning over, or is it like that coupled with an increase in call volume? I guess just kind of some more context behind like what can be done in that manner. And then second of all, when it pertains to connected community, I know one thing that we've talked a lot about too is the digital engagement. And I may have missed if it was said, but just wondering if we've considered maybe adding some key metrics around social media engagement. I know at Mobile GR, most recently, Mr. Naramore mentioned that his teams put together a lot of really creative content, and one of them ended up being, I think, the most engaged social media post in the city's history, from what I had heard. So just wondering if there's something we can maybe report on to celebrate those types of wins. I know Parks and Rec has some awesome content that I always see people raving about too. So I think that's just an important piece of engaging with, especially the younger communities, and wondering how we can better report on those types of metrics.
Absolutely. And one of the investments that we made in the prior fiscal year was moving someone into the communications department to focus specifically on digital content for that reason. And in fact, pulled up on my computer right now is Mr. Green's communications plan. And there will be metrics attached to that in each one of those areas. How are we performing relative to what we wanted to do? So you're going to see a lot more conversation about that now that we've been able to kind of build out a full complement of a team. We have Ms. Dorr here. I can speak to your question from a human resources perspective. And having previously overseen Ms. Dorr's team, really it comes down to 3 core things. 1 is the work, it's hard. 2 is the pay, it's not great. And 3 is the advancement opportunities, which don't exist unless you leave 311. Those are conversations that I've been having both with Ms. Dorr and with Mr. Canfield, who's now overseeing 311, to see if we can come up with a model that keeps people in those seats longer, because every time we turn somebody over in one of those roles, it takes months for them to get up to speed. They're operating 6, 7 different systems to be able to deliver on the promises we've made when it comes to customer service. And that's hard. So we are looking at that. You're very likely going to, I don't know if you will see, civil service may see some changes over the next couple of months that we've talked about to try to shore that up. But we acknowledge that it's time for us to recognize that it's not going, the situation that existed when I came here almost 5 years ago is the same as the situation that exists today, which means we need to make some changes and we need to make some other investments beyond technology to be able to get to where it is that we need to go.
Yeah, and I think I speak on behalf of all my colleagues in saying we're always very appreciative of the work that they do in connecting us with constituents, but I just think as we continue to foster more engagement with the community and with social media, people being more aware of how to reach out to the city for certain issues, I guess I only see the volume of inquiries and calls increasing from here on out, which is a good thing, but I just want to make sure that that resource being kind of the first line of connectivity with community members, that we're able to respond in a timely manner. So,
And it is an integrated approach, because part of the strategy is to divert the calls, to be able to provide answers and self-service for the people that want to and need to be able to do it that way. So you've got to attack it from both sides, and I know that they've been looking at some other technological improvements that allow people to get answers and to get self-service more readily. So if we can bring down the volume and we can increase the attractiveness of the positions, hopefully we can find an equilibrium that works. I can tell you, 30 years of doing this, 2 of your highest turnover positions are customer service reps and 911 operators, because it's a challenging role. So we need to be able to find a balance, understanding that there's still going to be some marginal turnover there, simply because of the nature of the role.
Mayor, if I could, so I'd also asked prioritize the personnel evaluation of increasing pay and also creating additional levels for promotion. But I think one of the things so that we, in recognizing some of those restraints, implemented, has it been a year or so, Ms. Dora, of the callback feature? And so similar to what you would get at a airline service or a car rental service, and in some places, an opportunity to leave a message and call back and receive a call back from staff. And I'd like you, if you could, do you have any metrics on our percent of callbacks every day if someone leaves a message?
Yeah.
Okay.
Quickly took a peek at last week. It's actually just continues to grow and grow. People can leave their phone number and we call them back, so then they don't have to wait on the line. So just last week we had more than 54% of our 2,500 callers from last week took advantage of the service. So they didn't actually have to wait for us. We gave them a call back when it was their turn in line and could provide service without having them sit on the line. But yeah, it's actually been pretty successful for us and relief for customers when they, we've had good feedback from people that utilize the service.
What percent given callbacks same day?
We handle all callbacks.
100% leave a message, get a call same day.
Yeah, my team, even on days that we're, low staff, they stay. We sometimes stay until 6 at night to finish all those calls. People are like, why are you still calling me? It's after 5. I'm like, yep, we're going to handle your service today. So I have a dedicated group of people right now.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and I'll just follow up. I've always been a big proponent of 311. I sat around this table when we invested in that and really believe in the service. I'm curious, I know historically we used to get regular updates about the types of calls and response times and things like that. And I know that historically we also would take a look at the types of calls and try to figure out, is there a theme? Is there something we can do on the front end to prevent some of the issues that people are calling about and working with the departments? Is that still happening, that kind of quality improvement process as we see spikes in certain types of calls?
Yeah, as much as we can. We had an upgrade over a year ago, and that kind of did a small reset with our data, but we're working on rebuilding some of that stuff. And I've been sharing here and there with our partner departments some dashboards and things to let them know what's peaking in your area, and we're continuing to improve that data to be able to share with more departments and help them to see what's going on for each of their areas of interest.
Okay, great. Thanks. All right, Commissioners, I think with that, we're going to move on to the next section so we can get through this before going into executive session. The next item is health and environment.
Thank you, Mayor. So as we look at our objectives, what we set out to do in FY23 when it comes to health and the environment, you'll see a lot here related to greenhouse gas emissions, related to energy efficiency, carbon emissions, and then, of course, all of our investments when it comes to green space. This, of course, also encompasses our environmental services department as well as our water services. So one of the other things that you'll see here is a lot of intentional work and investment when it comes to things like recycling, when it comes to remediation of lead hazards, and things of that nature. So if we look at our achievements over the last year, one of the things that we did over this past year was to actually put a number on what it is that we're trying to do community-wide when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions. That's always been elusive because the city doesn't have any regulatory authority to tell the rest of the community what to do. But we do have levers to help encourage the kind of change that we want to see. And identifying that target now gives us the opportunity to measure towards a target and try some things to see if we can't move that needle. In terms of our solar investments, I'm going to kind of skip back and forward here, but the Lake Michigan filtration plant was our first real effort towards building solar that supports our operations. That's fully operational at this point, and we just recently had a conversation about the deployment of solar at Butterworth. What may be able to support the city's operations, and then reflecting back to that first bullet, what are the things that might be able to support meeting that 62.8% reduction by providing things like community solar. One of the things that we've done internally over the last year, our innovation challenge over the last year has been to really engage staff on what it is that we can do as an organization to meet our 100% goal. And I want to note that that is a multi-level approach in the organization. Everybody checks their job titles at the door. Anyone can be involved, and we've seen employees throughout the organization take advantage of that opportunity, A, because they're passionate about it, but B, because we've created a space where they can have that kind of an impact regardless of their job title. And I think it really speaks to the approach that we're taking on a lot of our innovation initiatives, is that these ideas can come from anywhere. And we want to make sure that we've got open lanes to be able to communicate with our employees about that. You'll see here our continued work on EH0, which is specifically addressing the greenhouse gas impacts of the built environment. So we've been doing some canvassing in our targeted neighborhoods to be able to identify some homes where we can actually make retrofits in those homes and then measure the impact over time, not just in terms of their utility bills, but in the other social determinants of health and whether or not that has a positive impact beyond just lowering a power bill. And again, we're being very intentional about this because if we can prove out some of these points, then we know that there's other things that either we can invest in or we can look at some of our partners at the state, federal level to see if they won't invest in it. The other piece of that is starting our engagement around our own climate action and adaptation plan. That includes a number of teams, transportation, commercial, built environment, looking at all the aspects that affect that so that we can come up with a plan that runs parallel to the community master plan to be able to support our future development. On the utility side, you'll see our investments here in terms of both stormwater, in terms of water quality, in terms of our continued investment in lead remediation. We are effectively doing as much as our available funding and our available contractors will allow to get that work done. We've had some conversations over the last year in terms of how are we providing assistance to our customers when they need it. You see the number here, over 700 individuals took advantage of that, and that averaged out to about $350 per customer that received utility bill assistance. And then on the park side, we added almost 30 acres to the park's inventory. And that includes property at 32nd Street, Plaza Roosevelt, and Otsego Basin. Each one of those is in a different stage of either planning, development, or investment. And then continuing to focus on our maintenance efforts on the parks. It's one thing to have the acreage. It's, of course, another to make sure that they're well maintained for the community. That number increased in FY23, but it remains a focus, I know, for the department. One of the newer initiatives, it started, I believe, in 2021 or 2022, it was rebranded to GR Outside this year. That's encouraging members of our community to get outside. And you see some of the numbers there on the number of people that have taken advantage of that opportunity. Anybody that enjoys getting out, being outside, whether it be camping or other outdoors activities, knows that it's not necessarily the most affordable thing to do. And we don't want people to not have that opportunity simply because they might not have the means to be able to do it, or they might not have the knowledge to be able to do it. So that's an important work that Parks and Recreation has been doing. And then we talked last budget year about really leaning into our backlog when it comes to forestry, and we've continued on that progress as well. Finally, looking at materials management, we've got a rate study going on right now. We should have the results this fall so that they can help inform our conversation going into this budget year. As you all know, there have been a lot of shifting sands when it comes to the future of materials management, both on the recycling side and certainly on the solid waste side, refuse side, in terms of disposal. In fact, I reached out yesterday to see if I could get a clear idea of where the county is. They've hit the pause button on the Sustainable Business Park at this point, which really throws our rate making into a questionable state. We need to know what it is that we're investing towards for the future, so we're going to continue that conversation. You all adopted amendments to the Property Maintenance Code relative to urban agriculture. I'm sorry. I'm skipping ahead. To the Property Maintenance Code regarding lead dust screening, and I'll mention as well urban agriculture, and we're working through the implementation of both of those now. When we look at lead hazards in the home beyond the water, you'll see there we had 46 housing units that we addressed this year. And then in terms of mental health, over the last few years, we've talked a lot about alternative response from the police department. They've continued to invest in training for their officers to be able to respond better and differently when it comes to folks in mental health crisis. And this past year, they expanded their partnership with Network 180 so that they can utilize the mobile crisis response team model in an expanded fashion and more effectively to be able to address those concerns. And then the last one here on the fire department side, they formalized their positions around the homeless outreach team and got permanent positions into those roles. Then here on the last one, you'll see in terms of air quality, urban agriculture, and some of the cleanup work that we've invested in over the last year. That includes the work in Boston Square. That includes expansion of our air quality monitoring programs and being intentional about getting more of those air quality monitors in 49507 to make sure that we're not creating disparate incomes by not addressing potential hazards. And then some of our partnerships externally. Invest Health has been a great partner since I've been here. And they hosted several convenings. These are multi-city convenings to talk about things that impact the social determinants of health. This year we visited on accessory dwelling units and how those can have impacts, particularly financially, and then on public health and safe communities. So we look at our measures here. It runs the gamut both between direct health investments, lead service lines, air quality, water quality, and things like that, and then accessibility to parkland. How far do folks have to walk to be able to get to a park? How many programs are we offering to the community to be able to participate and stay personally healthy? And then how are we responding going to that last set of bullets, how are we responding to people in mental health crisis? How are we responding in terms of our response to the unhoused? And how are we effectively providing alternatives to jail for folks that find themselves in these situations? So at this time, I'm going to hand it back over to Ms. Behrens to talk about mobility.
All right, so for this priority area, we are focused on an innovative, efficient, low-carbon, and equitable mobility solutions that are safe, affordable, and convenient to the community. Just a refresher there. Again, we have 4 objective areas, and in 2023, we identified a number of, fiscal year 23, we identified a number of initiatives that we were going to focus on in order to move forward in each of those areas. I do want to call your attention to a couple of those here that are reflected on the table, including the expansion or the management of micro-mobility programs. So we do now have a single vendor that is supporting those, and we continue to work across our departments and with those vendors to ensure the safety of those options. So there had been some focus earlier this summer on that question, and rest assured we do share information across departments about any incidents related to those micro-mobility options, and work very closely with the vendor to ensure that they are operating and offering safe alternative modes for folks to get around. We are also continuing our work on the equity-based transportation pass program. So we have referred to that as the mobility wallet. So on that front, we partnered with the Rapid to seek some grant funds to pilot a wallet that would make affordable option or create affordable options for folks within our community, and expect to launch that later this year. Also, again, working with our micro-mobility vendors to ensure there are some affordable options there as well. Just with respect to some of our capital investments into the system, you see here we have continued to maintain the parking ramp assets. So there are a number of programs highlighted here, are some stairwell improvements in some of our downtown garages, as well as updated pedestrian crossings and crossing locations right here on Monroe between City Hall and the DeVos Center, which received a Michigan APWA award. We also briefed the commission earlier this year on changes to the DASH route, so DASH 3.0, a loop system. You see the map there. Coaches run in both directions on that loop, so hopefully cutting down your time in between either of the stops. We continue to work with the Rapid. They are challenged to be fully staffed from a driver perspective, so we expect over the course of fiscal year 24, as they get fully staffed, to get to the full complement of service hours that we are contracting with them for. We continue again to do some of the big projects, some of the big infrastructure improvement projects that support private development within the city. So the Market Avenue project, I know you've heard about for a while. We relocated a sewer, but we also made that street look different when we built it back. So if you haven't had a chance to walk it, it is a much improved experience in the area of the future amphitheater and private redevelopment. We also continue to fill those sidewalk gaps throughout our community, and looking to do that as efficiently as possible. So getting to our key metrics, again, want to flag that we are monitoring in a lot of places and measuring in other places. Safety is at the top of your list. It's at the top of our list. That is a foundational expectation for the mobility system. I do want to flag the fiscal year 22 and 23 data there about serious injuries and fatalities is flagged as red. That's not because the number of incidents is going up. It's because it's not going down as fast as we would like. So we put a target there that we would see each year a decline of 10% in those serious injuries, and we are achieving declines, just not to the 10% level yet. Also want to flag the mobility, micro-mobility ridership did go down in calendar year 22. Again, we are now focused with a single vendor and working with them frequently to make sure folks are aware of that service, and we expect to see some of those things go back up. And with that, I will turn it over to Safe Community, which is Chief Winstrom, it looks like.
I think I'm going to kick it off and then turn it over to a combination of presenters. I do want to just go back later on the mobility section and highlight, and perhaps one of the public safety professionals can help us, when we saw the pedestrian fatalities, bike fatalities, and delineate how many of those fatalities actually occurred on scooters. And so at some point, maybe before the wrap-up, come back and distinguish that. If someone can advance the slides for me, please. I want to begin with highlighting the strategic plan objectives that we focus on safe community, everything from constitutional policing and community police relations, as well as looking at our asset management programs within the fire department and staffing. I think staffing in both departments we'll hear information on that, as well as understanding public safety is much broader than just the public safety departments, although they play a key role. And so you'll hear a lot of our collaboration with community members and other organizations around prevention, both in fire prevention as well as crime prevention. And next slide, please. Yeah, yes. And our continued efforts in being both prepared for emergencies in terms of preparedness and planning, but also, as we've seen from last severe weather event, one human caused event, being able to respond when that happens. And you've heard several updates over the year over our Office of Oversight and Accountability and the things that they're doing both within transparency within public safety departments, but also community relations. So with that, I'm going to ask the chiefs from both departments and Mr. Davis to take us through a few select highlights.
Good morning. From the police side of things, as far as some exciting 2023 fiscal year accomplishments, the support from the Mayor and Commission and EPIC has resulted in them delivering a bunch of recruiting videos, updated recruiting website, which we're excited and we should see hopefully by the next time we all get together. Increased transparency in the fiscal year 23 through a larger social media footprint, increased FOIA efficiency, stronger partnership with the community, and internal accountability through our continuation of the DICE and our beginning of the SPARK program. We've continued to see success in recruitment as we're well above attrition rates. We hired 24 officers during that time frame. Did a complete review of policies and procedures, including a rewrite of the use of force policies. Created a mobile crisis response team in July of 22 and have now increased it to 2 teams. Brought in nationally recognized civilians from outside the department to come in and teach best practices in constitutional policing, self-regulation, de-escalation. Completed update to the strategic plan, hired Chief of Staff Matt Weibel. Our Explorers, which is a great farm system for policing, eligible any Grand Rapids resident, age 14 to 20, to become an Explorer, and we've seen that as a pathway to become a police officer with us. See our Explorer team won the Governor's Cup Trophy for the best Explorer group in the state, and we added 3 mobile camera trailers. Corresponse team, we've had success and we've seen better outcomes. And when you're looking at these numbers, you're looking at a lot of examples which could have either ended up in the past of an individual going to jail or going to the emergency department, where we're able to divert those individuals to a more appropriate treatment. We are increasing our percentage of CIT trained officers. Our 8 clergy on patrol members had 233 ride-alongs during this time. Jen Kalchik, our new PIO, who is now officially assigned to the police department, came up with this thing, 5 Things Friday, and it's been noticed nationally, so much so that the FBI NA in their class now teaches it as a best practice for ways to connect with the community. We've restarted our Behind the Badge podcast. We've done 5 since we started it back up. We have had open houses on a regular basis for potential recruits to come in, meet the GRPD leadership team, talk to our training, see the facility, and see what we're all about. And of course, in our yearly Muscular Dystrophy Association fundraiser with the fire department in our hockey game, we beat them by a score of 8-1. I'll turn that over to the chief of the fire department.
Thank you, Chief. Chief Brown, you have a comeback for that?
Stay professional, Chief.
Not much to say. So, FY23 major accomplishments. I was selected as the new fire chief and brought along a new fire dog, Smokey, which some of you have met. We've talked about the $35 million for the fire stations. Of note, that's going to fully cover Division Station, Kendall Station, and go a long ways towards our training center. But we still need to work with city manager and the fiscal office to look at the rest of our infrastructure. Our buildings are over 70 years old on average. This morning we heard about a budget substitution. We shifted money for some facade repairs. That station was built in 1910. And so every time you do a construction project in a building that old, you find a lot more than you bargained for. So that's going to continue to be on the forefront of the fire department's mind, is getting through each one of our stations and bringing them up and making them, frankly, more inclusive. They are quite dated in their design. We did graduate a class of 18 new firefighters. They are all on the streets right now. And I just texted to confirm the number. We were at about 45% non-Caucasian male in that class. The latest class that was approved this morning is at 56% non-Caucasian male. We continue to spend a lot of time and effort in our community to better mirror our community, and we're doing a decent job of that. One area that has come up over the last several years was a gap in our accreditation process of having a dedicated public educator. We haven't had a dedicated public educator in over 2 decades in the fire department. So, to Mr. Washington's point a few meetings ago, we are looking at all available areas and how we can utilize civilians to help fill these gaps. And so we have hired a former school superintendent as a part-time public educator. So she is doing a fantastic job tailoring the curriculum to our students in the area. Work has continued on the HOT team and the Fusion Center and working with multiple city departments. And I can tell you the phone calls, at least to the fire department, are way down from earlier this year through the work of a lot of different groups. One thing I want to point out, obviously the fire department does cost money, but I always want to point out the break-even date of June 26 this past year. June 26 was the date that the fire department saved more property and contents than their budget amount. We're not talking lives saved, we're not talking people pulled out of houses or the river or CPR saves. We're talking dollars to dollars. Over $36 million was saved by that date. And finally, our metrics are doing well. We're at almost 95% on our concentration, which is when we have a structure fire and send 19 personnel. We're doing quite well with that. The picture is up here is kind of a jab at my emergency manager. Allison Ferroli was out of town during the blizzard, and one of her bucket list items was to be on CNN. And I was filling in as the emergency manager, and I was on CNN. So when she got back, that was on her door. She has done a lot of really good work over the last year, several grants, several plans. The one thing that I really want to point out, though, is that office finally gained a little more capacity through a grant. Generally, we see a 3 to 4 person office for a city of our size. We're slowly getting there, and the grant-funded emergency management specialist is 100% focused on community outreach. So on social media, developing and running our citizen emergency response team. So that's been a huge add to the emergency management office. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Davis.
All right, thank you, Chief. Thank you to both you and Chief Winstrom. Hello, Mr. Davis.
Hello again. All right, well, I'm excited to talk about OPA and the great work that was done during fiscal year 23. OPA received a clarified grant of authority by way of the city's collective bargaining agreements with the fire department and both police unions. And we were as a result of that, we're able to publish our policy and really formalize our authority and jurisdiction. And this was a really big deal. One of the major encumbrances we've experienced was being able to explain to community where our authority began and ended. So the ability to do that has helped community understand how to utilize OPA and helped us work better with both the police and fire department. We also hosted the second annual Project Clean Slate Expungement Fair. We served over 400 individuals. There were so many people present at this expungement fair that we realized we had to do something different. And we really expanded the work, and now we're offering year-round expungement support through OPA. We've brought in a temporary staff person who's been doing a phenomenal job. Just last week, we reached 100 hearings scheduled, which is another level of looking at metrics of what's happening with this. So before, we offered the Clean Slate Expungement Program, and at the fair, we would help people get the paperwork finished, but we kind of stopped there, right? Once they had all their paperwork, it was on them. And now we've taken it a step further. We're helping them get scheduled with court, and we know that there's been at least 100 hearings scheduled with our assistants. We also partnered with Jars Cannabis to host a social justice equity job fair, which was really geared toward people with criminal records, saying, hey, you're still employable. There are businesses in Grand Rapids that want to hire you, and we're excited to say that several people benefited through that. We've also done lots of Know Your Rights sessions with community partners, and it's just been an amazing experience. As you may recall, we talked about the 4 different types of Know Your Rights sessions we offer, and we've offered all 4 of those through our community. This photo is a picture from our Clean Slate Expungement Fair this year, and it does not capture the line that was outside, but we're grateful to have been able to serve those individuals as well. This year, we also completed the first year pilot of the I Am the Dream Civil Rights Youth Academy, and this is the program we have that's geared towards junior high students. You'll see that picture, the first picture there with the purple background is from that academy. We ended up partnering with the Boys and Girls Club, and really were able to do some great work. These students loved the program. We got great feedback from them as well. It was the type of pilot that you want, right? We got great feedback regarding what they were looking for, what they loved about the program, and things they suggested that we changed, and we're excited to implement that as we offer the program again this year. We collaborated with GRPD and the Office of Equity and Engagement to approve requests through its community-informed training program, and that program again is designed to provide public safety departments training for best practices. The program we were able to approve thus far is a program that will help officers when interacting with members of our deaf community and provide cultural competency around that, and we have a couple of other programs that are still in the hopper being ironed out. I'm excited about the fact that we partnered with the African Resource Center to host our Let's Talk About Safety program. So you may recall that we have a Let's Talk About It program, but this time we're doing Let's Talk About Safety, and it's an art prize exhibit actually in City Hall, so on the first floor. And what we did was we gave students at the African Resource Center the opportunity to capture photographs of what safety means to them. What does it mean to feel safe? What is their experience? And there's some narrative to go along with that. So if you get an opportunity, please stop by the first floor and check out that exhibit. We've also continued to partner with the Grand Rapids Urban League, who's been a phenomenal partner in our Cure Violence work, and we're excited about the expansion to both the first and second ward. Speaking of Cure Violence, we participated in 2,515 interactions that led to violence detection and interruption. 56% of those are moderate risk and 44% of those are high risk. There were 243 interactions that led to the identification and treatment of high-risk individuals, and 177 interactions that led to mediations with key individuals. All right, I'll turn it back to the city manager.
All right, and if you could, Mr. Davis, just help me advance those slides. Several other departments also contribute to safety and crime prevention, and just wanted to highlight a few of the work that's occurring. The Community Development Department had opportunity to educate over 3,200 people on a variety of public safety projects and topics. Some of this related to some of the JAG funding that they receive, as well as other housing funding that will improve safety of neighborhoods as well as homes. Safe Task Force was able to implement almost 80% of the projects over the summer, and I was had the privilege to attend the very first one, the We Matter Now Spring Conference. You see some of the other highlighted projects, as well as the public safety review of some of the health and safety issues that ultimately made it to the City Commission for recommendation on ordinance enhancement. Next slide. You'll see the metrics of the various departments for police and fire and response time, as well as complaint activity reported from OPA. And what we'll do now is pause to see if there are any questions.
Thank you, City Manager. I'm going to try to move us through questions and comments pretty quickly. If you have additional questions, I encourage you to send them to City Manager, only because we have executive session, a number of important topics to cover. So I don't necessarily have any questions. I just want to put out a couple comments. One, under health and safety, I know it's not funding coming to the city, but I do want to just highlight that yesterday I was at a press conference announcing that Friends of Grand Rapids Parks and C4 received a grant for $5 million to plant trees in our city over the next 5 years, to the tune of hopefully 16,000 trees, which will go a long way in getting us to that 40% tree canopy. So I'm really delighted about that. And then I just want to thank both chiefs and Mr. Davis for all your work that you've been doing around public safety and moving us forward on all of these goals. So, Commissioner, I'll go down here to Commissioner Sassi and see who else has comments or questions.
I too just will add one comment. Again, we had a really good presentation last meeting about Butterworth Solar. So, I think some of these pieces were, a bit of a repeat, which is okay, but excited to have some process and movement there. Second, what was shared about public safety, in June we had no homicides. So I want to highlight again that I think that is a wonderful reflection. Obviously, any death is too many, and that's not every month, but that is something that our departments should be proud of. And so I just wanted to add those pieces. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioners, any other questions or comments? All right, Commissioner Robbins?
Thanks. I just have one quick comment. Jumping back to mobility, I just wanted to give a shout out to the city staff for updating the dash route. I know there's been a lot of talks and feedback from Hartside, especially pertaining to giving some form of accessibility along South Division. So was really excited to see that route update taking effect this month. And I know the residents and business owners there are super happy. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I believe we're seeing an increase in ridership, which is great. Any final questions or comments? All right.
Here, there was one statistics I asked for in terms of micromobility and the scooters. Do we have that information?
Yeah, so to clarify, we had reported the fatalities and major accidents, and so that does not include any fatalities related to scooters. We are aware of potentially one or two that could be linked to scooter use, but were not reported that way, so that data is not reflected in the numbers. Also, major accidents, there are none there related to micromobility either, and that is something we are working on. So generally speaking, if I get on a scooter, I do something dumb and I hurt myself, or I operate it safely and I still hurt myself, not to make allegations. If I don't hurt anybody else, I don't hit a car, I don't do anything else, I don't have to call the police. I may call the ambulance, and so we're working on getting data from those ambulance calls if they involve Lyme. And so Mobile GR and Fire are working so that when we update those in the future, we should be able to draw from that source. Our traditional crash reporting source doesn't capture those sorts of reports.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. All right, Commissioners, with that, I'll thank everyone again today for this great update. You have a couple additional slides in here with information that's available, honors and recognitions, and then future updates and discussions. So we have those dates before us, taking us through not just today, but all the way through September of 2024 with important dates that we'll make sure are on your schedule. City Manager, any final comments as I close this up and we move to executive session?
No, Mayor, I just want to again thank all the departments for their work and those that presented today, and hopefully we can build upon this when we meet again in October.
All right, thank you. So Commissioners, we'll close Committee of the Whole. As I said, we have public safety. We have a performance review executive session later this afternoon with Mr. Glebinski, Civil Service this afternoon, and then we have a commission night out tonight at the Goy Center there in the First Ward. So that will start at 5:30. We'll kick off the meeting And is there anything I missed? Okay, we'll kick off the meeting and then go into some engagement processes and then come back together to finish up the business. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just saying, now everybody's saying, where's lunch? I didn't plan, did you?